The fact that we humans, who are ourselves mere collections of fundamental particles of nature, have been able to come this close to an understanding of the laws governing us and our universe, is a great triumph.
For most of the history of this universe, there was nothing. No light that anything noticed, no sound that anything heard. Galaxies formed, lived, and died without a single witness. Stars burned for billions of years, brilliant, furious, and alone. The universe did not know it existed, and then on one small, unremarkable rock, orbiting one ordinary star, something extraordinary happened. Something woke up. "4 billion years ago, this planet was a different world. No forests, no oceans as we know them, no creatures moving through the dark. But deep beneath the surface of early seas, at the edges of hydrothermal vents, places of extraordinary chemical violence, something was beginning. Not life, not yet, but the chemistry of life. Carbon bonding to carbon, molecules folding, information of a kind beginning to copy itself. Something became alive. And at some point that we cannot name, on a date we may never know, a boundary was crossed. A single cell has no brain, no nervous system, no neurons firing in a darkened skull. And yet, watch it. It moves toward food. It moves away from harm. It responds to the world as if the world matters to it. Is that feeling? We don't know. The philosopher David Chalmers called this the hardest question in all of science. Why does anything feel like anything at all? Why isn't the brain, or the cell, simply a machine that processes information in the dark, with no inner experience whatsoever? We have no answer, but the question will follow us through this entire story. "540 million years ago, something extraordinary happened. In the space of, by geological standards, an instant, almost every major body plan in the animal kingdom appeared. Eyes, limbs, shells, predators, prey. The Cambrian explosion. And with it, for the first time, came something we can say with more confidence was beginning to feel. The nervous system. The philosopher Thomas Nagel asked a deceptively simple question. What is it like to be a bat? Bats navigate by echolocation. They perceive the world through sound, bouncing off surfaces in ways we cannot directly imagine. We can describe the neuroscience. We can map every neuron. But can we know what it feels like to be a bat from the inside? Nagel argued, probably not. And that gap, the gap between objective description and subjective experience, may be the most profound mystery in all of philosophy. The brain is not a machine that merely processes information. It is a machine that experiences. humpback whale lives in a world of sound. Its songs travel hundreds of kilometers through the ocean, complex, structured, changing year on year as new variations are invented and spread across entire ocean basins. Is this culture? Is this art? We don't know. But when a whale is separated from its pod, it calls for days, sometimes weeks. And in that call, researchers have documented something that, if it were a human sound, we would not hesitate to call grief. The question is not whether animals have consciousness. The question is why we ever thought they might not. A New Caledonian crow, when confronted with food it cannot reach, will spontaneously construct a tool from materials it has never seen before. Bending wire, combining sticks, solving problems across multiple steps. It plans. It imagines a future that does not yet exist. The crow has no prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain we once thought was the seat of higher thought. Its brain is built on an entirely different architecture from ours. And yet, there it is, thinking. The octopus is perhaps the strangest mind on Earth. 2/3 of its neurons are not in its brain. They are distributed across its 8 arms, each capable of independent action, independent sensation. An octopus does not so much decide to reach for something as it thinks with its body. Each arm a collaborator, a separate voice in an ongoing conversation. If you asked an octopus what it feels like to be itself, if such a question were possible, the answer might be something we have no words for at all. When we find the bones of ancient humans, we ask the obvious questions. How tall were they? What did they eat? Where did they go? But the deeper question, the one that haunts any honest archaeologist, is this. What was it like to be them? In the last 2 decades, we have learned to read the DNA preserved in ancient bone, the genome of a Neanderthal who died 60,000 years ago, a Denisovan known only from a finger bone, a human from the earliest settlements of the Fertile Crescent. Their genes are not alien, they are recognizably like ours. A Neanderthal and a modern human share roughly 99.7% of their DNA. They buried their dead. In some sites, we find flowers placed alongside the bodies. We find ochre, red pigment, rubbed onto the bones of the departed. But what does it mean to bury someone with flowers? It means you believe the dead was someone. It means you had a concept of loss. It means, perhaps, that somewhere inside that skull, a skull that sat beside a fire 60,000 years ago on a cold night in Europe, there was a mind that grieved. The DNA does not tell us what Neanderthals felt, but it tells us with genomic precision that they were us, just different. Today, scientists work in temperature-controlled clean rooms, sealed against contamination from the modern world. Coaxing readable DNA from bone that is 40 or 60 or even 100,000 years old. From these fragments, we map the evolution of minds in third-person terms, while the first-person character of experience remains out of reach. We recover not what it was like to be them, but the structures that made any what it is like possible. You are not the same person you were 10 years ago. Not metaphorically, literally. The neurons that form your memories have changed. The atoms in your body have been replaced almost entirely. The person who remembers your earliest childhood, who is that? Is it you? In 1690, John Locke argued that personal identity is memory. You are the continuity of your consciousness across time. The self is not the body. It is the story the mind tells about itself. 300 years later, the philosopher Derek Parfit took this further, and the conclusion he reached was both terrifying and somehow liberating. Parfit asked, if your brain were gradually replaced, neuron by neuron, with identical artificial neurons, would you survive? And if yes, at what point would you begin to die? The ancient Greeks asked a simpler version of this. The ship of Theseus. If every plank is replaced one by one, is it still the same ship? We laughed at the question for 2,000 years. Then neuroscience arrived, and suddenly it wasn't funny anymore. Parfit's answer was radical. There is no deep fact about whether you survive. The self is not a substance. It is a pattern, a river, not a stone. It has no sharp edge, no precise boundary. And if that is true, then death is not the sudden extinction of a thing. It is the slow dissolution of a pattern that was always dissolving, always reforming, always already in the process of becoming something else. Parfit said this realization made him feel, quote, liberated. When I believed my existence was a further fact, I seemed imprisoned in myself. My life seemed like a glass tunnel through which I was moving each year closer to death. I could see less to live for. After my change of view, my life seemed like an open landscape. The self matters less. The pattern continues. We have now confirmed more than 5,000 planets beyond our solar system. Some orbit in the habitable zone, that narrow band of distance from a star where liquid water can persist. Some are rocky, like ours. Some have atmospheres we can analyze from across the galaxies. We have not found life yet. But here on Earth, we have found something remarkable. Life in places we once thought were impossible, in boiling acid pools. In the frozen rocks of Antarctica. In the crushing darkness of the deep ocean floor. Life, it turns out, is less fragile than we thought. And if life is less fragile, then mind may be less rare. Eyes have evolved independently at least 40 times on this planet alone. Each time, life has arrived at roughly the same solution to the same problem. How do you make sense of light? If consciousness is a similarly convergent solution, if the universe tends to produce minds wherever it produces complexity, then we may not be alone in our experience of being. But here is the deeper question: would an alien mind be anything like ours? We cannot assume that consciousness requires a brain, or bilateral symmetry, or even chemistry as we know it. A being that senses the universe through magnetic fields, or pressure waves, or quantum states we have no names for. That being might experience a universe so different from ours that the word experience no longer quite applies. And yet, if it processes information, if it models the world, if something happens inside it when it navigates reality, perhaps that too is a kind of mind. The astronomer Carl Sagan wrote, "We are made of star stuff." He was not being poetic. He was being precise. Every carbon atom in your body was forged in the nuclear furnace of a star that died before our sun was born. The iron in your blood was scattered by a supernova. You are literally the universe arranged into the shape of a human being. But Sagan went further. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself. For 13.8 billion years, this universe existed. Extraordinary, vast, complex, without any part of it being aware that it existed. And then, us, and perhaps others we have not yet met. Descartes sat alone in a room in 1637 and asked, "What is the one thing I cannot doubt?" He could doubt the world. He could doubt his senses. He could doubt everything, except the fact that he was doubting. Something was thinking, therefore something existed. I think, therefore I am. It was the most certain thing a human being had ever written down, and it left us with the hardest problem we have never solved. What exactly is that I? Some philosophers argue that consciousness is not something that appeared in the universe. They argue it was always here, in some primitive form, woven into the fabric of reality itself. If every other explanation fails, if we cannot explain why there is something it is like to be anything, then perhaps consciousness is not a product of complexity. Perhaps complexity is what happens when consciousness wakes up enough to notice itself. Perhaps we are not in the universe observing it. Perhaps we are the universe observing itself through us. We began this story with an empty universe. 13 billion years of silence, of matter moving through space without any part of it knowing it was moving. And we end here, with you. You are the universe's attempt to understand itself. You are what chemistry becomes when given enough time and enough pressure and enough hunger for meaning. We still do not know why you feel anything. We still do not know whether the whale's song carries grief, or whether the ant colony dreams, or whether somewhere in the dark between the stars there is something that would recognize you as kin. We do not know if the self survives, or whether it was ever quite what we thought it was. But here is what we do know. You are here, right now, in this moment, reading light that has traveled from distant suns through a universe 440 billion light years across to land finally on the surface of an eye, and to become this: thought, wonder, and awareness. The story of the mind is not finished. It is, in every sense, still happening. In you.